Rex Tillerson.
Yeah.
You watched the hearing yesterday. Did you see a man that you think is qualified to be or should be the next Secretary of State?
Well, here's the debate that's going on in this town, particularly among the Democrats, and it's a kind of question of whether you judge the man or whether you judge the position that he's been in. He spent 41 years at ExxonMobil, the largest oil company in the world. He's extremely wealthy, maybe worth more than Donald Trump, since we don't actually know how much Donald Trump is worth. But he's north of a $500 million in net worth. How do you feel about a man who's been pushing ExxonMobil's interest for all these years, has a huge deal with Russia, the biggest oil exploration deal ExxonMobil has by a factor of 5 is with Russia. They can't get to it. They can't exploit it because of the sanctions that have been put on Russia over Ukraine. How do you feel about putting him in charge of our relations? I think that this is a priori an inappropriate appointment. You should not put a position with this many intrinsic conflicts of interest in charge of state relations of the United States. But a lot of Democrats are judging him as an individual. Is he a good man?
Make a point on that, which
please.
is only in that fundamental to this, I believe, argument is that what's good for ExxonMobil is not necessarily good for the United States.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, people don't see that. They say, well, he's a big businessman, and so therefore, he's got all the skills that he needs to be Secretary of State. But he was making deals that were not in our best interest. They were in ExxonMobil's best interest all around the world.
All around the world, with corrupt African dictators, with the Kurds in Iraq at a time when the U.S. government expressly said, don't make that deal. You're weakening the central government. Of course, with Russia at a time when we strained relations. But a lot of people are judging him on his skill set, on his demeanor, on his broad shoulders, on his looks.
Yeah.
And so, this man, is he competent to be Secretary of State? Of course he is. George Shultz was a corporate executive, made an excellent Secretary of State. So if you just judge him by his skill set, and here's the killer. A lot of Democrats are saying, what are our choices? If we don't accept him,
you could get a Rudy, huh?
You could get a Rudy. You could get something a lot worse. So they're kind of settling for Rex and brushing aside these corporate interests. I think that's short-sighted.
Now you mentioned, and let's go, Jamie, if we can, to Marco Rubio trying to nail him down on a couple of issues. And the first was, what about how do you consider Russia? Here's Rubio. I think
is Vladimir Putin a war criminal?
I would not use that term.
And he did say Russia was a danger, but then he says, so he's not, as you pointed out, not a war criminal. But he is, isn't he? I mean, when you look at what he's done in Syria and in Ukraine and in Crimea, shooting down an airline.
500,000 people dead in Syria, largely because of the Russian bombing. Assad killed tens of thousands, maybe 100,000, but it was really the Russian bombing that escalated these, and the indiscriminate bombing. By definition, that's a war crime, targeting innocent civilians. It seemed to be implicit in the use of chlorine as a chemical agent in some of these barrel bombs that they dropped, etc. So yes, and bombing humanitarian convoys, trying to give you all that, by definition, war crimes. Rubio is a true Republican hawk, and this is part of the divide in the Republican Party.
Who does not see Putin as a friend.
Does not at all, and is very concerned about this. Criticized Trump during the campaign on this issue, and it's part of the split. Half the Republican Party is now remarkably rolled over. Half the Republican Party now trusts Putin more than they trust Obama, respect Putin more than they ever respected Obama. It's a disturbing trend in the party.
And where we know, as you pointed out, that Tillerson has said publicly that the sanctions against Russia are a mistake. The original sanctions, now that there are additional sanctions because of the hacking, I'm sure he thinks they're even more of a mistake. And that this $500 billion oil deal in Siberia is blocked. ExxonMobil's deal is blocked because of the sanctions. How did he come out yesterday on keeping or getting rid of the sanctions?
He hedged, as he did on many, many issues. He said, we'll have to look, we'll have to ascertain what the situation is, we'll have to make that judgment as we learn more. So he just punted down the road. And if anybody, do you doubt that he's going to lift these sanctions as soon as he possibly can?
No.
Right.
No. I mean, again, he's not going to change his spots. I mean, that's his That's his position.
Yeah, this is going to be part of
It's like
improving relations with Russia. It's going to be lifting the
it's like
sanctions.
Jeff Sessions on voting rights, right? You can't take a guy, to me, who's been on the other side of the issue his entire freaking career, and then think suddenly he's going to change from day to night when he gets a different job.
I mean, the way I look at
or
this,
night to day.
he's been
I
with
should say.
ExxonMobil 41 years. He's going to be Secretary of State for 3 or 4. It's a temporary assignment for him.